Ladies and gentlemen, imagine living in a world where everything bends in your favor, not because you force it, but because you trust it. What if the moment you stopped panicking, the universe started cooperating? You see, the people who seem to glide through life as if it's all working out for them aren't lucky. They've simply understood one quiet truth. The world responds to how you move within it. When you walk with the posture of peace, when your breath says, "I'm not in a rush," and your thoughts echo, "I know it will come," reality listens. Let me ask you, what would happen if you acted as if everything was already working out for you? Would your mind resist less? Would your heart open more? This isn't about fantasy. It's about alignment. And by the end of this speech, you'll understand why the most powerful shift isn't in your circumstances, but in the story you silently live by. Your perception creates your reality. This is not just a poetic phrase. It's a fundamental truth that governs the way your life unfolds, moment by moment. What you believe about life, yourself, and the world is not merely stored away in some quiet corner of your mind. These beliefs become the blueprint for how you move, speak, think, and act. And more importantly, they become the silent architects shaping your experience of reality itself. If you walk through life expecting things to go wrong, you subconsciously position yourself to encounter resistance. You become tense, cautious, reactive. Your mind scans for danger. Your body tightens in anticipation of loss, and your energy repels the very abundance you claim to seek. It isn't that the world is cruel. It's that your lens only shows you the evidence that confirms your internal narrative. You begin to experience not life itself, but your story about life. Now consider the opposite. If you truly believed, deeply and unapologetically, that things always work out for you, how would your posture change? How would your speech soften? How would your decisions shift? You would no longer rush. You would no longer cling. You would no longer fear that missing out on one opportunity means losing everything. You'd understand that the river of life is wide, abundant, and constantly flowing toward your highest good, even if it takes detours you don't fully understand. Your faith in that process would become your foundation. And this shift, this deep inner knowing, would ripple outward into your actions, your relationships, and your results. When you expect life to cooperate with you, you begin moving from a place of trust instead of fear. And trust has a magnetic quality. People feel it. Opportunities sense it. Life notices it. But there's something deeper to understand here. What you expect is what you attract, not through some mystical superstition, but because your expectations govern your behavior. If you expect rejection, you hesitate to reach out. If you expect failure, you hold back effort, giving only enough to say you tried, but never enough to succeed. And if you expect disappointment, you filter out the beauty that is trying to unfold around you. If you act as if things always work out for you, you become more courageous. You take the leap. You make the call. You start the project. You hold your head a little higher and your heart a little more open. That shift in behavior creates new results, and those new results begin to reinforce your original perception. So the cycle builds. Your belief becomes your reality. This is not about denial. It's not about ignoring pain, hardship, or challenge. It's about choosing which lens you will carry through those moments. Will you carry the lens of fear? where every difficulty becomes a confirmation that life is unfair? Or will you carry the lens of trust, where every difficulty is simply part of the unfolding, like clouds that eventually pass to reveal a clearer sky? What most people don't realize is that your outer world is not randomly assembled. It is constructed from your internal settings. The more you believe you are supported, the more you will move in ways that allow that support to appear. The more you trust in your timing, the less you will try to control what was never yours to command. And in that surrender, life begins to feel lighter. Perception is powerful because it is the only filter you have for reality. You don't see things as they are, you see them as you are. So if you want a new life, you don't start by changing your job, your relationship, or your city. You start by changing the story you tell yourself every single day. Tell yourself that you are guided, that life bends in your favor, that setbacks are setups, that redirection is protection, that even in silence, the universe is orchestrating something meaningful. And then act like it's true. Walk like it. Breathe like it. Decide like it. Because once your perception shifts, reality has no choice but to follow. Faith is not belief without evidence, it's trust without control. This simple truth, when fully understood, unravels much of the tension that dominates the modern mind. You see, belief is often mistaken for faith, but the two are worlds apart. Belief clings. Belief demands proof, patterns, and outcomes to stay intact. It says, I'll believe it when I see it. But faith whispers, I'll see it because I believe it. And this kind of trust, deep, quiet, and surrendered, is not concerned with control. It flows with the unknown. It dances with uncertainty. Most people live with a conditional mindset. They say they trust life, but only when life behaves the way they want. They say they believe in their path, but only if every step is lit. They want guarantees. They want assurance. They want to see the full picture before they commit their hearts to it. But that is not faith. That is a transaction. True faith exists in the absence of control. It arises when you choose to trust even though you can't see the ending, even though it feels like the road is twisting in ways you never planned. It's choosing to trust that every twist, every delay, every closed door is somehow a part of the architecture of your growth. The mind fears losing control. It wants certainty, timelines, definitions. It wants life to be a series of predictable moves like pieces on a chessboard. But life isn't a game of control. It's a dance of surrender. And those who find peace are not the ones who master life like a machine. They are the ones who flow with it like a river. Because faith isn't rigid, it's fluid. It bends, it yields, it trusts. You don't plant a seed and dig it up every hour to check if it's growing. That would kill it. You plant it, and you trust the unseen process. You water it, you nurture it, but you leave it alone. That's faith. Not blind hope, but intelligent surrender. The same applies to your life. When you try to control every outcome, when you obsess over timing, over people's responses, over whether your dream will work, you suffocate your own potential. Control is rooted in fear, and fear creates resistance. But faith is rooted in love, and love invites flow. Faith says, I don't know how, but I trust it will. Not passively, not lazily, but with a calm readiness. Faith doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you take aligned action. and let go of the obsession with results. You do your part, then you release it to something greater. Whether you call it the universe, the divine, God, or simply life itself, it doesn't matter. The point is, you stop micromanaging what you cannot control, and this shift changes everything. When you trust without control, you become more present. You're no longer living in the anxiety of what if. You stop rehearsing tragedies in your mind. You begin to listen more deeply to your intuition because you're not drowning in fear. And when you're in that space of trust, you begin to notice how life subtly supports you, how things fall into place when you stop forcing them. Trust doesn't mean there won't be storms. It means you stop trying to push the ocean. You learn to navigate, to adjust your sails, to float rather than fight. You begin to see delay not as punishment, but as divine pacing. You begin to accept that what's meant for you may not come according to your schedule, but it will always arrive on time. This level of trust is not weakness, it's profound inner strength. It's the kind of strength that doesn't break when things go wrong. It adapts. It still chooses hope. It still chooses movement. And perhaps the most powerful part of trusting without control is that you begin to experience peace before the outcome. You no longer say, I'll be at peace when it happens. You say, I'm at peace whether it happens or not. That's when you become unstoppable, when your joy no longer depends on outcomes, when your energy is no longer held hostage by the future. Faith is not blind obedience. It's not passive naivety. It's a conscious decision to stop resisting life and start aligning with it. It's knowing that even when the road makes no sense to your mind, it may still be perfectly clear to your soul. And in that surrender, life begins to flow, not because it was broken before, but because you were resisting. When control falls away, trust takes its place. And trust has the power to transform everything. Acting as if shapes your identity and behavior. We often think that we must first become something in order to behave a certain way. That we must achieve confidence before we speak boldly. That we must attain success before we carry ourselves with dignity. That we must see results before we believe we're worthy. But the truth is, transformation doesn't begin when you arrive at the destination. It begins the moment you start behaving like you already belong there. When you act as if you are already the person you're becoming, you begin to shape not only your outer life, but your inner wiring. Your brain doesn't wait for reality to give it permission. It responds to the cues you send it, the way you speak to yourself, the posture you hold, the choices you make when no one is watching. These all send subtle signals to your mind about who you believe you are. And the more consistently you act in alignment with your higher self, even before results show up, the more your mind begins to rewire itself to support that identity. Acting as if isn't about pretending or faking confidence. It's about calling forward the part of you that already exists, the version of yourself that is calm under pressure, that trusts the process, that takes bold steps, even in the face of uncertainty. That version is not far away. It's buried underneath the doubts, habits, and patterns that have convinced you to play small. Every great transformation begins in the unseen. Before anything becomes visible in the world, it starts as energy, as thought, as intention. So when you act as if you are already who you want to become, you are aligning your inner world with the reality you are inviting in. You are no longer waiting for permission to grow. You are taking authorship of your identity. But think about how this shows up in small, everyday ways. When you sit up straight, when you speak clearly, when you carry yourself with calm confidence, people begin to treat you differently. Not because something outside has changed, but because your self-perception has shifted. And once you believe in yourself at a deeper level, the world around you begins to reflect that belief. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach begin to move closer. Conversations flow differently. Decisions feel lighter. That's not magic. It's alignment. The challenge is that many people are waiting to feel brave before they act brave, waiting to feel inspired before they begin, waiting to feel successful before they show up as someone who deserves success. But life doesn't work in that direction. It responds to who you are, not just who you wish to be. If you want to change your life, change your behavior first. Show up early. Speak from your chest, not your fear. Say no to what drains you. Choose thoughts that empower you. And don't just do it once. Do it daily, especially when you don't feel like it, especially when doubt creeps in. Because that's when it matters most. That's when you're reprogramming the part of you that once believed you had to wait for something or someone else to change first. This principle applies across every area of life: relationships, career, health, creativity. If you want a loving relationship, act like someone who already loves and respects themselves deeply. If you want success in your craft, treat your time and your effort with discipline and care, as if you are already a professional. If you want peace, act like someone who prioritizes stillness, boundaries, and clarity. The as-if is not a lie. It is a bridge, a sacred in-between space where you stop clinging to who you've been and begin leaning into who you are becoming. And every time you cross that bridge, your old limitations begin to dissolve. Acting as if becomes acting as is. The mask drops because it's no longer a performance. It's your truth. You're no longer reaching for something external. You're simply living from the reality you've already built within. And that's the quiet power of this idea. It doesn't demand anything from the world. It asks everything of you. But in return, it gives you authorship over your life, clarity over your direction, and the dignity of knowing that you no longer have to wait to become who you already are. Reality responds more to emotion than logic. This may sound strange to a mind trained in systems and analysis, but it is one of the most overlooked truths of human experience. We like to believe that logic rules the world, that if we just think clearly enough, if we make the right calculations and plan with precision, we will be able to sculpt life into our desired shape. But have you ever noticed that two people can follow the exact same plan, take the same steps, and still arrive at vastly different destinations? It's not always about the actions themselves. It's about the energy beneath them. Emotion is the invisible force that colors our decisions, fuels our behavior, and influences how others perceive us. It's the emotional charge behind a choice that often determines whether it lands or falls flat. When you speak with conviction, when you move with enthusiasm, when your presence is lit from within by a calm sense of certainty or joy, you transmit something far more powerful than logic could ever carry. You become magnetic, not because of what you say, but because of how you feel when you say it. The universe doesn't just respond to effort, it responds to frequency. and emotion is the carrier of that frequency. Think about it. When you remember a powerful moment in your life, you don't recall every detail with perfect logic. You remember how it made you feel. Those feelings get etched into your being. They shaped your memory, your interpretation, and your motivation moving forward. And consider how you approach your desires. You may say you want abundance, success, love, or peace. But if your emotional baseline is worry, fear, or doubt, you are out of sync with the very thing you're asking for. Logic says, I've done everything right. Why isn't it working? Emotion says, you don't really believe it's possible. And reality listens to your emotional truth, not your spoken intentions. This is why people who carry joy, even when they're uncertain, tend to find their way forward more gracefully. It's why those who trust deeply, even in the face of setbacks, often land on their feet. It's not because they've mastered every detail of the game. It's because their emotional frequency aligns with faith, openness, and movement. They are not operating from resistance. They are not trying to force life to behave. They are in harmony with it, and life responds accordingly. Your emotions are not liabilities to be suppressed or managed like wild animals. They are guides. They are signals. They are the creative engines of your reality. When you suppress emotion in favor of logic, you lose the vibrational clarity that tells life what you're ready for. You might take all the correct steps on paper, but the result may still feel hollow because you weren't emotionally aligned with it. When you allow yourself to feel the outcome before it arrives, when you embody the peace, the joy, the gratitude as if it were already present, you create a resonance that draws the experience to you, not in a way that's magical or manipulative, but natural. Emotion creates momentum. When you feel deeply, you act differently. You persist longer, you speak more clearly, you attract differently, not because you're trying to convince the world, but because you're living in the emotional state of someone who already knows. This doesn't mean logic is useless. It's a powerful tool, but only when guided by emotion. Logic can tell you how to move. Emotion tells you why. And it's the why that breathes life into everything you do. Without it, your journey is empty mechanics. With it, even the most uncertain steps are charged with meaning. If you want your reality to shift, start not with spreadsheets or schedules, but with your state. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Am I operating from fear or faith? Am I grounded in scarcity or in trust? Then shift your internal climate, not by pretending, but by choosing emotions that empower you. Gratitude, curiosity, calm, excitement, wonder. These are not just pleasant feelings. They are frequencies that tune you into a reality that reflects those qualities back. Reality doesn't bend to how much you think you deserve. It responds to how you feel deep inside. And when your emotional truth says, I am already there, the rest of your life begins to catch up. The subconscious mind can't tell the difference between real and imagined. This fact is both astonishing and liberating. It means that the pictures you create in your mind, the stories you repeat to yourself, and the emotions you attach to your thoughts are not dismissed by your subconscious as fantasy. They are received as instructions. They are recorded as experiences for your subconscious. There is no distinction between what happened in the external world and what you deeply, vividly imagine in the internal one. This is why athletes rehearse winning in their minds before they ever step onto the field. It's why fearful thoughts produce real symptoms in the body, and why imagining peace can actually calm your nervous system. Your subconscious operates on repetition and emotion, not logic and fact. It doesn't care whether what you're imagining is possible or not, true or false. It only knows what you feed it, over and over again, through your focus, your self-talk, and your emotions. That's what forms your default programming. If you consistently imagine failure, rejection, or chaos, your body begins to prepare for it. Your nervous system tightens. Your heart rate changes, you become alert, defensive, and tense. And when life presents even neutral situations, you perceive them through the filter of that subconscious programming. You might hear opportunity and assume danger. You might see a new path and anticipate failure, not because the world is threatening, but because your inner script has already written that ending. Now here's the power in this. Since your subconscious mind reacts to imagined experiences as if they were real, you can use this to your advantage. You can begin to imagine the life you want with such clarity, such emotional depth, and such repetition that your subconscious begins to treat it as familiar, as safe, as normal as your new reality. And once something feels normal to the subconscious, it no longer resists. This is how transformation begins. Not by willpower alone, but by reconditioning the subconscious to accept a new standard. If you want to feel confident, see yourself being confident. Hear your own voice speaking with strength. Visualize yourself walking into the room like you belong there. Feel the ease in your shoulders, the clarity in your tone. Practice this image again and again until your subconscious registers it as truth. The same principle applies to abundance, health, relationships, success. Your current beliefs may be shaped by years of past programming, some of which you never chose consciously. Maybe you were told, "You're not enough." Maybe you've been conditioned to expect struggle. Maybe you've rehearsed disappointment so many times in your mind that joy feels unfamiliar. But you don't have to live in that script forever. When you act as if everything always works out for you, you begin to rewrite the inner story. You start feeding your subconscious images and feelings of ease, grace, and possibility. And this is not just empty imagination, it's mental conditioning. It shifts your emotional set point. It lowers your resistance. It rewires your nervous system to support a new version of you. And here's what happens next. Once your subconscious accepts the new identity, your behavior begins to shift. You no longer sabotage opportunities. You begin to say yes to things you used to fear. You make different choices, not because someone told you to, but because they feel aligned with who you now believe yourself to be. People around you sense that shift. They respond to it. The outer world adjusts to match the vibration of your inner one. It's not magic, it's alignment. And it starts with imagination. Not as an escape, but as a tool. Not as wishful thinking, but as purposeful reprogramming. This is why it's so important to pay attention to your inner world. Guard the images you dwell on. Challenge the stories you replay. Ask yourself, if my subconscious is listening, what am I telling it right now? And if the answer doesn't serve you, change the message. Speak life over your future. Imagine success. Imagine peace. Imagine yourself thriving. Not someday, but now, with detail, with emotion, with repetition. Because once your subconscious believes something, your life begins to reflect it. Not immediately, not always in the way you expect, but inevitably. That's the power of the mind. It doesn't just record reality, it creates it. Gratitude accelerates positive outcomes by shifting your emotional state before external change occurs. This may seem counterintuitive to the logical mind, which tends to believe gratitude should follow a blessing, not precede it. But the deeper truth is this: gratitude is not merely a reaction to life, it is a generator of life. It sets the tone for your internal state, and your internal state is what attracts and creates your external experience. Most people live in a state of waiting. They wait for the job to come, the relationship to blossom, the money to appear, the clarity to arrive. Then they'll feel thankful. But this mindset delays the very energy that invites those things in. When you wait for the external to change before you allow yourself to feel grateful, you trap yourself in the future. You send a message to life that says, I'm not whole yet. I'm not ready yet. I don't trust yet. And life, in turn, mirrors that back. But when you choose gratitude now, not for what has happened, but for what is becoming, you send out a different signal. You say, I believe. You say, I trust that what I desire is already on its way. You align your frequency with reception rather than resistance. And that subtle shift changes everything. Gratitude does more than uplift you emotionally. It recalibrates your nervous system. It softens fear. It dissolves urgency. It pulls you into the present moment, where real transformation takes place. You stop grasping. You stop control. You move from desperation to calm expectancy. And in that state, your choices become clearer, your energy becomes magnetic, and your heart becomes open to receive. Think about this deeply. Have you ever met someone who radiated genuine gratitude? Not because everything in their life was perfect, but because they had learned to see perfection in the unfolding. These people move differently. They speak with presence. They don't chase life, they collaborate with it. Their energy feels safe, grounded, attractive. That's not a coincidence. That's a result of inner alignment. And gratitude is one of the fastest ways to get there. Even in the face of challenge, gratitude offers power. It says, this moment is teaching me something. I may not fully understand it yet, but I trust that nothing is wasted. That trust is what keeps you from spiraling into hopelessness or victimhood. Gratitude reframes setbacks as setups. It allows you to find meaning where others see only delay. It keeps your spirit intact, even when circumstances seem to shake. Now, imagine approaching your goals with this mindset. Instead of obsessing over when something will arrive, you begin to say, thank you that it's already in motion. Thank you for preparing me for it. Thank you for the wisdom I'm gaining in this season. Thank you for removing what no longer serves me, even when it hurts. This attitude is not weakness. It is power cloaked in softness. It is the posture of someone who trusts the timing of life more than the speed of results. Gratitude also closes the gap between desire and fulfillment. Why? Because the emotional state of already having something draws it nearer. When you feel grateful in advance, your body and mind begin to operate as if the blessing is already present. You make decisions from abundance, not lack. You take action with joy, not tension. You approach people with peace, not pressure. And life, always listening, begins to reflect that calm assurance. This is the secret that ancient wisdom, spiritual teachings, and modern neuroscience all point to. Your emotional state is the engine of your reality. And gratitude is one of the most powerful emotional states available to you, accessible at any moment, regardless of your circumstances. Begin small. Be grateful for the breath in your lungs, the clarity of this thought, the chance to begin again. Be grateful for every lesson disguised as difficulty. Be grateful not only for what is obvious, but for what is unfolding beneath the surface. And above all, be grateful for the becoming, because even if the path is unclear, your presence on it is not an accident. Gratitude turns waiting into receiving. It transforms lack into abundance. It rewires your mind to see blessings even before they bloom. And the more you practice it, not as a performance, but as a truth, the more you realize life has already been conspiring in your favor. You just needed the eyes to see it. Gratitude gives you those eyes, and with them, you stop chasing miracles and start recognizing them. Resistance creates delay. Surrender invites flow. The human mind often equates control with safety. We believe that if we can predict, manage, and grip tightly to our desired outcomes, we can avoid disappointment and pain. But this obsession with control is often the very thing that stands in the way of the life we're trying to build. Resistance is subtle. It disguises itself as responsibility, perfectionism, or even ambition. But beneath it is fear. Fear that if we loosen our grip, everything will fall apart. Yet, paradoxically, it is in loosening that grip where things begin to fall into place. Resistance creates friction in your energy. When you resist what is happening, when you fight against the present moment, you cut yourself off from the intelligence of life. You become reactive, not responsive. You block insight, creativity, and guidance. Even your body feels the cost. Tension in the chest, shallow breathing, restless thoughts. You are no longer in the stream of life. You are paddling upstream, exhausting yourself against a current. It's trying to carry you. Surrender, on the other hand, is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is the courageous act of saying, I trust what is unfolding even if I do not yet understand it. Surrender doesn't mean you stop acting. It means your actions are no longer fueled by fear or desperation. They are born from clarity, from alignment, from a deeper intelligence within you that knows when to move and when to be still. When you surrender, you enter flow. You become more receptive to intuitive nudges, to synchronicities, to doors that open, not because you forced them, but because you stopped pushing where you didn't belong. You've stopped chasing and instead start aligning. And life, which was waiting for your softening, begins to respond. Think of the moments when you've been most at peace. not because everything was perfect, but because you were no longer resisting. Maybe you walked away from a situation you couldn't control. Maybe you let go of someone or something you thought you couldn't live without. And in that letting go, in that release, a quiet strength emerged. You found yourself breathing again, feeling again, healing. That's not collapse. That's power in its purest form. Undramatic, spacious, alive. Surrender clears the noise. When you stop resisting, you stop clinging to timelines, to expectations, to identities that no longer fit. You make space for what actually wants to enter your life. So many people wonder why they feel stuck, why nothing seems to move forward. Often, it's not because life is withholding anything. It's because they are holding on too tightly to what no longer serves them. Letting go feels scary because it feels like loss. But in truth, it is expansion. It's saying, I am no longer willing to shrink myself to fit an old story. Flow is the natural state of life. Rivers don't push their way through mountains. Trees don't rush their blooming. The seasons don't argue with time. They follow their design. They trust the cycle. And we too are designed for flow. When we stop forcing and begin to cooperate with the unfolding, we find that things often happen faster, more beautifully, and more unexpectedly than we ever could have planned. But surrender doesn't always feel easy, especially when we've been taught that struggle is noble and control is strength. The ego wants to feel in charge. It wants a guarantee. But surrender is the art of stepping back while still showing up. It's holding the vision while releasing the demand. It's walking with faith, not fear. And this doesn't mean you become passive, it means you become precise. You stop wasting energy resisting what you can't change, and instead invest that energy into what you can. Your attitude, your awareness, your readiness to receive. You become a steward of your inner world, and from that centered place, your outer world begins to shift. Resistance is rooted in fear. Surrender is rooted in trust. And trust is not blind, it is built. Every time you surrender and watch life rise to meet you, you deepen that trust. And before long, surrender stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like the most natural thing in the world. Let go of your grip on how you think things should unfold. Let life surprise you. Surrender isn't the end of your power. It is the beginning of real power, because it aligns you with the intelligence that has been guiding everything all along. And when you walk in that alignment, resistance dissolves, delays vanish, and you finally begin to flow with the life that's been waiting for you. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you believe you are. Wanting is natural. Everyone wants something, more peace, more love, more money, more purpose. But desire alone is not the engine of manifestation. You can want something with all your conscious will and yet continuously block it. If at your core you don't believe you are worthy of it or capable of receiving it. The universe, life, consciousness, whatever name you give to the vast intelligence that animates this experience, it does not respond to your wishes alone. It responds to your identity. Your life reflects the inner story you hold about yourself. Not the one you say out loud, but the one that echoes quietly in the background of your mind. the story that says, I'm never enough, or things never work out for me, or people like me don't succeed. These narratives are invisible scripts, but they dictate your behavior, shape your choices, and filter what you allow yourself to see and receive. If you want to change your life, you must change who you believe you are. Not by pretending, but by consciously choosing a new identity, one that aligns with the reality you seek to create. Because you are always becoming the person you believe yourself to be. And your environment, your relationships, your opportunities, they are all extensions of that identity. This is why two people can walk into the same room, face the same conditions, and have completely different outcomes. One believes, I belong here, and starts attracting connections, confidence, synchronicities. The other believes, I'm out of place, and begins to shrink, to overthink, to close off. It has nothing to do with the room, and everything to do with the inner posture each person brings. What you believe you are sets your emotional baseline. If you believe you are abundant, you feel relaxed around money. You make clearer decisions. You invest in yourself. You attract opportunities that match your sense of worth. But if you see yourself as lacking, you become anxious, you hesitate, you undervalue yourself, and that scarcity becomes your reality, not because life is cruel, but because you continue to confirm it with your energy and your choices. Identity governs behavior. That's why change can feel so hard. It requires a shift at the root. It's not about forcing new habits. It's about becoming the kind of person for whom those habits are natural. When your identity shifts, your actions shift effortlessly. You stop fighting with yourself. You start acting in alignment. You begin to live from a place of embodiment rather than effort. This is where self-possession becomes sacred. The way you see yourself, speak to yourself, and carry yourself creates the blueprint for what you receive. So ask yourself, if life is mirroring my self-perception, what is it reflecting back to me now? And more importantly, what would shift if I saw myself differently? You don't need to wait for external proof to believe in your new identity. In fact, it's the belief that comes before the proof that initiates the transformation. Act as if, feel as if, live as if. When you begin to be the version of yourself who already has what you desire, the world starts catching up. But this isn't just about changing your thoughts. It's about changing your state, feeling it in your body, trusting it in your heart, breathing into it until it becomes familiar. That's when identity settles in, not just as an idea, but as a reality. And yes, this takes repetition. It takes consistency. You've spent years, sometimes decades, reinforcing an identity that may no longer serve you. It won't dissolve overnight. But each time you choose the new story, each time you act from the new self, you weaken the old narrative. You begin to build a new frequency, one that doesn't just wish for transformation, but embodies it. It becomes your natural way of being. You don't need to force belief. It becomes who you are, and that is when manifestation becomes inevitable. Because now, you are not asking for something to happen. You are simply receiving what you've already become. Life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you believe is you. So become the version of yourself that life cannot help but respond to. Not through striving, but through identity. Not through demand, but through embodiment. and you will watch quietly and powerfully as the world begins to rearrange itself to reflect the truth of who you now are. The universe responds to energy, not desperation. This is one of the most overlooked truths when it comes to creating a meaningful life. So often, people focus on what they lack and think that the sheer intensity of their desire will magnetize what they want. But in reality, it is not the wanting that calls things to you. It is the energy behind that wanting. And if the energy is rooted in lack, fear, or anxiety, what you end up reinforcing is not abundance, but the very absence of what you seek. You must understand that energy communicates louder than words. You can say all the right affirmations, take all the right steps, and visualize all the success in the world, but if the core of your being is still vibrating in lack, the universe picks up on that frequency. You're not asking for abundance, you're declaring its absence. You're not trusting the process, you're trying to manipulate it out of fear that it won't unfold in your favor. Desperation repels what you want because it is born from the belief that you are not okay without it. It screams of insufficiency. It says, I need this to feel whole, to feel valid, to feel safe. And that's the problem. When your identity is dependent on an outcome, your energy becomes rigid, closed, and controlling. You start gripping life instead of flowing with it. And whatever is born from force never truly lasts. You may achieve something through sheer willpower, but it will cost you peace. And often it slips away just as fast as it came. Now compare this with aligned energy. When you move from a place of trust, from knowing your value is not tied to a result. You still want things, you still set intentions, but you're not begging the world to give them to you. You're not bargaining with your worth. You're simply open, present, available. And this openness is magnetic. It invites rather than demands. It allows rather than chases. Think of someone who walks into a room with calm confidence. They're not trying to impress. They are not desperate for approval. And because of that, people are naturally drawn to them. Their presence speaks louder than their words. That's what aligned energy feels like. It doesn't push. It pulls. It doesn't rush. It trusts. And it doesn't question its own power. It lives it. The same principle applies to every area of life, whether it's money, relationships, career, or healing. If you approach it with anxious urgency, you signal to the universe that you are disconnected from your source, that you believe you are incomplete without some external condition being met. But when you recognize that your wholeness is already intact, your energy becomes stable, generous, calm, and from that foundation, you attract what is meant for you, not through grasping, but through resonance. This is why it's essential to check your emotional state before you act. Not just what do I want, but who am I being as I pursue this? Are you rooted in fear or anchored in faith? Are you making decisions from trust or from trauma? The energy behind the action is what determines its power. When your actions align with calm expectancy, with the quiet knowing that everything is unfolding in your favor, you walk differently, you speak differently, you draw things to you effortlessly, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you are aligned. The universe is not keeping score of your effort. It's responding to your state. You don't have to prove you're worthy. You are worthy. Your job is not to push harder, but to align deeper, to center yourself in the energy of wholeness. to act from the version of you that already has what you seek. Because when your energy says, I already am, the world has no choice but to reflect that truth. So breathe. Let go of the frantic chase. Come back to your center. That's where the real attraction begins. Not from desperation, but from presence. Not from needing, but from knowing. Because in that space, you stop seeking miracles and start realizing that you are one. When you act as if everything always works out for you, you do more than just think positively. You align with a deeper truth of existence, that life reflects your inner state more faithfully than your outer effort. This isn't about delusion or denial. It's about choosing trust over fear, surrender over control, and identity over wishful thinking. When you embody gratitude before the gift, when you believe you already are what you desire to become, and when you move through life with the calm energy of knowing, rather than the frantic energy of needing, everything begins to shift. Reality bends for those who stop resisting it. The universe, far from being chaotic or indifferent, is responsive, not to your demands, but to your frequency. And that frequency is shaped moment by moment through your beliefs, your self-perfuming, your energy, and your willingness to let go of everything that isn't aligned with the life you know you're here to live. Act as if, not to fake it, but to become it. Not because you're trying to trick the world, but because you finally understand that you're not here to chase your reality. You're here to create it from the inside out. And the moment you truly live from that truth, life begins to work for you, not against you.